This is the voice of Bold Business Radio, and I am your host, Jessica Duell of Red Direction. You're listening to Program 11, The Matter of Mindset. These days, there's a mindset for everything. Success, millionaire, money, influence, love, life, global community growth, awareness, learning, discipline. Even I put mindset in front of creativity for a creativity mindset in the work that I do. In addition to that, the Act-to-Plan method that Red Direction created is 4 frameworks that identify and shift mindsets for business growth and profitability. Think about how many kids' books there are about overcoming obstacles, being okay with who we are and what we look like, what it takes to be actively involved and accepted by our society and in our society. The last self-help book or personal development book you read also contained a variation of one of those themes. I mean, we spend immense amounts of time and energy throughout our lives protecting what we believe. We hold on to it, and no matter what, it can't be right. And we get worried or defensive or fearful when we might be wrong. And no matter what, it's easy. It's easier to tell ourselves a story and block out anything that's outside of what we know. Yet unless we open up even a single tiny fraction, just once in a while, we don't grow, which means we're not fulfilled, which means we're going to just breed more fear, which means all kinds of other things. And maybe some of us are happy that way. I mean, I do know a few curmudgeons, and they're totally okay with the way they are. And that's totally okay. This show, The Matter of Mindset, Program 11 of the Voice of Bold Business Radio, is for those of you who are somewhere in between. You're looking for more and haven't found it yet. You're seeking out ways to interact with the world differently, to have more of something that you're looking for, that you want, that's being called to you.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Duell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
So mindset, when it shows up in life, it can show up in the most mundane type of thing, right? I grew up brushing my teeth with Crest toothpaste. It took my husband Ryan, this was a while ago, but I have to tell you, after brushing your teeth with Crest for as long, and when we were kids, we didn't necessarily know about fluoride quite the same way we do today. So it was from early. I've been brushing, ever since I can remember brushing my teeth, I've been a Crest kid. And so I remember the conversation when we first talked about fluoride possibly being an issue to health and having that discussion and how closed down I was. I would not let Ryan talk to me about the potential health benefits or the potential health risks of fluoride in my toothpaste. I wasn't even open to the idea because I had brushed my teeth for so many years. And of course, my parents did it, and my parents knew what was going on, and they loved me, and they wouldn't let me do anything that was horrible or wrong or dangerous. So I shut him out, and I wouldn't talk to him about toothpaste. Every time he brought it up, I would just shut him down. Okay, one example of a place where I used to be incredibly closed in my mindset. And that's actually a phrase, having a closed mindset or an open mindset. A lot of this conversation that you're going to be listening to today, which is really me, myself, and I, and you, and the thoughts in your head, are going to be based off of this book, Mindset, The Psychology for Success by Carol Dweck. And the reason for that is she defined something that everybody has talked about but has never really articulated before. And that is, there are 2 kinds of mindset. And what's more exciting is she also found that if we wanted and if we'd accept the invitation, we can decide to change. Pretty neat. So yes, we can get set in our ways, but yes, an old dog can also learn new tricks. And it's all right here in this book. And I see, it's really interesting how kids model. You guys all know I have a 5-year-old, And the other day he came home and he was telling me he couldn't do something because of something else. He's trying really hard to fit in. What's his story? What can he do? And I let it go and I listened to him, and then we were in the car and this conversation came up again, and it was like, I'm doing it because you told me so. And I was like, okay. And it was something really weird and outrageous, like he's eating carrots because I told him to. Well, yes, we eat variety in our house, and carrots are on the diet in terms of making sure we have something crunchy and all kinds of other things that go into that. And I tried a couple of times because it was very closed. It was, because you said it, I'm going to do it. And I said, well, there are other crunchy things in the house that achieve the same goal as carrots that are also colorful, that also have a lot of nutrients that you could choose if this carrot is really bothering you. And he kept going back to, no, because you told me to, or I'm only going to do what you told me to. And then as soon as he said that, I'm only going to do what you told me to, I was like, oh, he's in a place where he's safer and he feels more comfortable having this closed mind, knowing he's going to be taken care of. And I think we all go to that place occasionally as well. And so it's very interesting because I stopped trying to convince him. I was like, oh, all right, he's got this need. He's figuring this out. He's feeling it. And we're going to go from there. But it does come up in the way that we were talked to as kids by our parents. I mean, if we were always praised, you do a great job, you're so smart, oh, wow, you're so good at that, we're going to do everything in our power to make it real. And if that means going out on a limb and possibly failing or being embarrassed or falling down and not achieving the goal, we would rather mess it up on purpose, sabotage it, or not even go near it with a 10-foot pole because we're protecting this image that we were given. And I find that very interesting because every once in a while I find myself doing that to Carter, and I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And the things that I did, I'll tell you another story. I played the flute for basically half of my life. Somewhere in there was a chunk of time where I played the flute for many, 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 many years. And I loved it. And I was not that great at it until I started playing the piccolo. Once I played the piccolo, something clicked, and all of this stuff inside of me, I actually went and I got really good. Well, I was expected to be the first chair, and I was one of the top 3 flautists of my class, the 3 high schools that existed. And when it came time to memorize something to show how good I was, I chose not to do it, or I failed miserably, and I self-sabotaged. I just decided I couldn't do it. I decided I wasn't going to do it because I was too good for it. I was too good and I didn't need to show anybody. Well, that was one way to go. And I did that several times, and I recognized that my being told by other people gave me an identity that I didn't have. So I think when we think about mindset, and we spend a lot of our adult lives unraveling and deciding, is our personality, is our identity tied to this or that or nothing at all? And I use that as an example because I still have things that I come across and I'm like, oh, I'm trying to protect myself here. So I can recognize when I have a closed mindset, and I can decide to take it on if I want to change it, and I can decide not to. And I've done both. So by the way, the flute and the toothpaste, I've become a little bit more open about now. You may get an emotion once in a while if you try and talk to me about either one of those things. But for the most part, it's, I'm a little bit more open about it, and I understand that that's what had happened. And so I actively try, when I find those things, to just give myself a little bit of grace. Give myself a little bit of grace. And this shows up in business too. So as a leader of ourselves, of a team, in a business, of our family, it doesn't matter. As a leader, we have a responsibility to understand the mindsets of those around us in addition to ourselves. And we're talking about things like businesses and families really are required to do more and more and more with less and less and less. And we're required to adapt quickly. I mean, when a child in our house gets sick, our whole day may change. When an employee calls in because they're sick, our whole day may change, right? Those are things that are out of our control and there's nothing we can do about them. But we can be adaptable around them. We can take the steps to be able to move into and through those unexpected situations that are out of our control, that just being one of them. I mean, one time, one of the businesses that I worked with closely for many years, one time they came to work and one day and they went to get their mail and their mailbox was locked. The franchise that they had decided to have their mailbox at had just gone out of business and shut the doors and didn't tell them and didn't give them any notice. Well, this was an e-commerce company accepting check orders. So for months, they had a problem because of something that happened to them outside of their control. And, you know, what are you going to do about that? I mean, you know what you would do. They did what they were going to do. So we have to really think about, there are things outside of our control that are going to happen to us every day on a small scale and on a large scale that impact us. So when we're trying to do more with less, it just means we're looking for resourcefulness and being a problem solver. And we can be a problem solver within a very safe set of boundaries, which will work for a while. But what happens when those boundaries, those knowns, those walls that we're working within, what happens when they don't work anymore? What happens when they start to crumble? We don't know. You know, we don't know. Adaptability matters here. It matters a lot. So I'm going to bring it back up. This book, Mindset by Carol Dweck, there is a website, mindsetonline.com. From there, you can actually take a test to find out if you are a growth mindset with some fixed, a fixed mindset with some growth, or a fixed mindset. One of the things I like most about this book is Carol herself was, when she took the test and started to do this, she realized that she had a closed mindset. And so to have the author of a book discovering something and articulating something and willing to change herself through it, that says a lot to me about the research and the information that is put in there. And I think you'll find it useful if you haven't taken the test to just know and to recognize what the signs are in terms of being able to help people and where they're at, and meeting people where they're at to still move forward in a positive and effective way. And I'm curious for you listening, what do you think? How would you promote having more of a growth type mindset? Is it to continue to read books? Is it to listen to somebody specific talk about these things? What are your tips? This would be very useful information to have for leaders just like you that are on this path, just like you and just like me. There are a couple of other books that come to mind around mindset. And these are ways, these are just ways we can check ourselves and we can find out what pulls us forward, where we're most comfortable. And I'm not going to use comfortable, I'm not going to actually just say a little bit more easy, where it's easier to work from, because comfort sometimes means stuck or avoidance. And I'm talking about being pulled forward into something that is the right thing and it's actually easy to do. And so comfortable fits there in that sense. There's a sense of ease in place. And one of the books that I really love that's been in part of my life, my whole life, is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. This Richard Bach story talks about this evolution of this bird. Seagulls are seagulls, and they do seagull things, and they act like seagulls, and there are things that they just don't do. Well, this wonderful little bird, Jonathan, decided that he didn't understand that, and he questioned and he questioned and he questioned, and and the results of that were what happens when you go against the status quo, what happens when you go outside of the norm. There's resistance from the people around us. That doesn't mean we're experiencing resistance. It means we're seeing resistance in others. And his evolution and what happened. And I have to tell you, even today, I didn't know, even today, it comes forward to the fact that this just brings a smile to my heart, because we all have this in us. We're all a little bit like Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So if you haven't read it, this is one that I like. And it was really funny. I was talking to somebody about this a couple of years ago, and they said, have you ever listened to the song? And I had no idea there was a song about Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So if you don't want to read the book, maybe the lyrics will be just as good. It's interesting because for me, when I check myself, right, the concept of checking myself, as soon as I feel my defenses going up, I put up a wall, and for me, it's a wall. Some people, when they get, when they're to check somebody else, all of a sudden the air around them turns frigid. Like you've literally walked into a refrigerator and you have no idea what just happened. Other people, there's a little bit of anger. There's a huge a negative emotional release that comes up, and you can see it in their face and their being, and their whole body is just pulsing with this heavy energy. And there are a lot of other ways to check too. It's when we can recognize what happens to us. So when my wall goes up and I literally physically and emotionally and mentally distance myself from the person I'm interacting with, I have just now started to recognize that that's the place where I'm like, oh, I need to check myself. What's going on here? There's a defensiveness, and what's making me defensive? Is it a past experience? Is it a cycle in the same situation that keeps coming up? So there's something that my body's reacting to that I can check in with and say, hey, this is kind of crazy. This is kind of weird, and I just don't know what to do here. And it all happens so fast that sometimes I don't recognize it fast enough. I see it go by, and I'm already on my path to whatever was going to come out of my mouth, to however I was going to already react. Yet sometimes I'm able to see it go by, and I can snatch it, and I can decide, do I want to do what I've always done in this situation, or do I want to do something different? And it's in that moment that there's an opportunity for mindset change and growth to occur. I'm fortunate to have so many amazing, smart people around me. And just listening to the panel discussions and the co-host discussions that we have on this show and the interviews that come up, I'm amazed at how much creativity, how much inspiration, and how much people are actually creating. And it's interesting because we live in a world where, there are creators and makers, and there are people who recirculate or gather a whole bunch of information together and then push it back out in their own channels. They're making their own channels for distribution. And it requires all of us are required to make the flow of information, to make the opportunity to communicate, to decide how we want technology to support us it puts it all in place for us. And when we think about that, and knowing that technology moves so fast and it's so disruptive and it changes the way that we experience the world when we're not at work, it can sometimes be hard when we come to work and we don't have the same instant gratification. So when we're talking about that instant gratification of, I can just go, I'm like, today, and this is a perfect example, today I recognize that my favorite patent leather, my black patent leather shoes that I wear everywhere this time of year have a hole in the side. And patent leathers, it's not replaceable. So I had to go look for a pair of shoes. Well, I had 5 extra minutes before I was going to start this recording, so I got on the internet and I went to my favorite shop and I looked up and I bought myself a couple different kinds of shoes, and they're going to be here tomorrow, and I'm going to try them on and I'll send back which one I decide I don't want. That's pretty much instant gratification. This company knows that getting a pair of shoes can be incredibly easy, and they've made it so I can have my instant gratification with shoes without actually having to drive downtown to a store. And I enjoy that very much. Yet at the same point in time, to actually make that delivery system happen, to actually make it so, to make the shipping and all of the inventory and all of the pieces and all of the customer service that goes with all those moving pieces to give me instant gratification of having my shoes tomorrow is not instant on the implementation side. It's iterative. And so there's this place of when we're experiencing instant gratification and we're working to most likely in some capacity give our customers, the people that we're solving problems for, as a great experience immediately, even if it's not the product immediately or the outcomes don't come immediately. There's this expectation of experience that we have that's going on and that we're giving them. Yet it's not that way in our business. We don't just snap our fingers or come in with a new idea and it gets put into place. There are plans that are required. There are steps to go through. There are communication loops between the different aspects of business so that we can catch things that might fall through and address them so that our customers don't have a poor experience or a different experience than we intend them to. And there are skills to do that. There are skills involved with mindset. There are skills involved in being able to make it look like it's super easy to give me what I want when I want it, and actually put the processes and the systems in place to make it look easy to me. So the skills, right? Problem solving. Love it. It's like my favorite thing. I know somebody has taken the hashtag for problem solving. I just need a t-shirt that says problem solver. That's really what I need. And in problem solving, when we're talking about mindset, the whole concept of mindset, whether you're growth or a closed mindset, doesn't matter. We can still problem solve. We start with the fact there's a problem. Total and complete problem. And then what do? We say, okay, we've got this problem. Then we have to decide, is now the time to fix it? Do we want to fix it? Doesn't even matter. And our answers might start to differ based off of our mindset. And then, there are all the solutions that come up from where we're at right now. And then choosing to implement a solution, and how do we measure success also? So it doesn't matter what mindset type we are. It doesn't matter what personality we are. It doesn't matter whether or not we're good at something or not. It matters that we know how to problem solve and the steps of that. And that in and of itself can get us ready for any situation and be open to new ideas. What about observation? What about just sitting at the bar of a coffee shop in a grocery store? I mean, who ever thought, speaking of, right, instant gratification. When I was growing up, there was never coffee shops in grocery stores. But think about it, sit and watch. Go to the grocery store, have a cup of coffee, and just watch the people coming in. You can see all kinds of things. You can tell what kind of day you're having. You can imagine the good things or the rough things or the easy things or the difficult things that they might be facing, all from their body language. And that level of observation and just noticing is something that is very incredibly useful, because then when we're in conversations with other people, we can check our own mindset. We can also recognize a little bit quicker and easier the mindset of somebody else, so that we can do our part and take responsibility for having the dialogue we want, and at least putting the intention of what we want to come out of the interaction that we're engaging in. That brings me to think about, here's another one. This podcast, this radio hour is all about books, apparently, because there are so many great books about mindset. I can't just talk. Hang on, let me take a step back. I can just talk about it myself and my experiences. But it's not nearly as fun to just do that. It's more fun for me to share the love of the books and the authors that I know or have read that really have impacted me around this concept of self-awareness, mindset, and being able to interact with others where they're at. So Dare to Be Yourself by Alan Cohen is also a great book. It talks about, we were talking earlier about the expectations people give us, and so we protect those. When we're exploring what we don't want, right, what might not be us anymore, sometimes people call it what serves us or not, right? We can let go of what doesn't serve us anymore. Well, Yeah, that's one way to do it. Sometimes we have to let go of things that don't work anymore. Sometimes we have to let go of things that are just plain difficult because we choose something else. And this is it. Dare to be yourself is about self-choice, recognizing and starting with ourselves what we want, recognizing and evaluating the people, the relationships in our lives that we want, and are they beneficial to us? Meaning, do they, not that they're always good and not that they're always impactful, but they influence us in a way that allows us to stretch and grow. And even when we're experiencing a wide range of emotions, I mean, just think of any marriage or two business partners. There's always an ebb and a flow and an up and a down where conflicts come up and they get handled, and conflicts come up and they get handled, because everything is growing in this ebb and this flow, and it's how people show up together. But to really show up and make forward progress, we have to really know where we stand, and we have to understand where we stand and which part of us we share with the people we work with. We share with the people that we're married to. We share with the people we choose to surround ourselves with, both at work and out of work. So there's just a commonality of openness. And we have it all, which, by the way, I think that's a different book by Alan Cohen. You had it all the time. That's the title. It's pretty neat to consider and recognize that we're right here. And if we're not stepping up, and if we're allowing ourselves to be defined by others, we're limiting ourselves. And we have to have the courage to find the courage to draw that line in the sand and say, here I am. And maybe we don't do it with everything at once. Maybe we do it with one thing at a time. Maybe we don't even know we're doing it, but we're being pulled that direction. And when we're pulled that direction, things start to shift as well. So building the skills comes with practice. Whichever skills you're working on, awareness, willingness, practicing supporting others, managing your emotions, checking in and being able to identify and increase the range of emotions that we have, making mistakes and recognizing that the mistakes that we make are giving us confidence to do it differently next time. And the more successes we have and the more mistakes that we make, the more confidence that we are going to build. And that's just experience that comes with time and effort. And the more we do it, the more we learn. So we're practicing. We're doing this over and over and over again. Which is, you know what? No, I don't have another book right now. I thought I had another book. Right now. The courage too is another one. Stepping up, recognizing when we're in our comfortable chair and a little too comfortable, and willing to get uncomfortable and change it up a little, do something different, think like somebody else, and see how that impacts what we do next in our action when we consider more than one perspective. So skills, practice them, and define what the steps are. And if you need any help, you know where to find me. I can help you do that. Come up with the steps that you already know about a skill. Come and recognize the ones where you might need a little more work, and just practice them every day in little things. It could be, I give examples like this all of the time. Like I'll even tell you tonight. Tonight, Carter has swimming lessons. Ryan's taking Carter to swimming lessons, and there's no food in the house. I just didn't get around to grocery shopping. So there's no food in the house. So we had to have a conversation. What are we going to do? And how are we going to handle it? And when is it going to happen? And what's the timing around it? Both from me, when I don't eat, I turn into a great big monster. And when Ryan doesn't eat, he turns into a great big monster. And when Carter doesn't eat, he turns into a tiny monster that's louder and crazier than the two of us combined. So, we've got to eat, and we've got to make that happen. We can put our problem-solving skills to that. We can do a quick observation and have a conversation and figure out where we are emotionally. And we can just say, okay, this is what's going to happen tonight. And if it doesn't work out great and somebody has a meltdown, which sometimes is me, I'll tell you, sometimes I'm the one that has the meltdown because I don't get fed fast enough, is we can figure out what happened. We can look at it and we can do it differently next time. So we don't have to be doing things with trying to get a client or potentially losing a client to practice these skills. We don't have to change great big processes of accounts and receivable and how we interact with customer service or what our marketing messages are. We don't have to start gigantically large. We can start on very small things. And I think that's the piece where if we're willing to take a look at ourselves and our day-to-day activities outside of what our responsibilities at work are, there are places that we can practice these skills. So here's a story about Carter, since we were talking about this. And like I said, I love stories about my 5-year-old because they really bring into perspective assumptions that we have out in the world. And this involved me and one of Carter's schools. Me, Carter, and Carter's teacher and a school. So in our house, right, we lived in Seattle for a very long time. So when Carter was born, it rained a lot. And when it was just too cold rain and he was just too little to be outside in the rain for very long, as soon as he could walk, which was really stinking early, we said, sure. We made the rule. You can run in the house. We made our house run-proof. We made sure there was a space for it because kids like to move and they like to move a lot and they may not want to move outside in the rain all the time. So we said, yeah, you can run in the house. Well, our house is not the grocery store. Our house is not somebody else's store where we're running errands. And our house is not the library or the school. So one day, Carter was running at school. And the teacher says, well, do you run at home? And Carter says, yes, I run at home. And the teacher got furious because she decided he was lying. Assumption number one. She decided this little kid was lying about being able to run in the house. So he got in trouble. He had to sit out. And when I picked him up from school that day, I got out of the car to get him and buckle him in. She said to me, Carter said that, and literally in that kind of a voice, like she was waiting to be validated, to be right, and that this little kid was lying. And Carter said he is allowed to run in the house. And I paused, because I'm like, well, what else am I going to do? Because I can tell, not knowing the whole rest of the story, what's going on, that she's expecting me to side with her for some reason, and this is a good thing. So I said, well, yeah, he can run in our house. I can run in my house, and my husband can run in my house. That's our house rule. And then I looked at Carter, and I looked at the teacher, and I said, but school is not our house. So Carter and I will talk about walking and using walking feet at school. And the teacher was deflated, and she was embarrassed, and she was upset because this little guy was right and she was wrong. Well, she got faced with one of her own assumptions. And in that sense, in terms of mindset, what I hoped to demonstrate, granted he was way littler than 5, so maybe this is for me too here, is to practice and recognize that I could do this again in the future and maybe have a similar response of, oh yeah, I made the assumption that I didn't have to worry about talking about the difference between at home and not. Okay, so I recognized, hey, there's something I can do here. Okay, I've got to talk to my child and we've got to have some dialogue about where it's appropriate to run. Didn't occur to me I needed to do that, but now that I know, I can use that information. And the teacher, as embarrassed as she was, I hope that she took away that we can't always assume that everybody always has the same rules. And that's so that's just one example. And I'll bet you, and I think if I did it, I could bet me too, that there are still things I'm making assumptions about that either nobody's called me on yet or haven't been a big enough issue for anybody to say anything about, but that I'm missing. And you might be missing too. So take this running in the house story as an example of something where I can learn from myself, and I can try to continue to do that, and I can continue to challenge what I believe and what I think to be true, just enough to know that it actually is or isn't, or that it might have changed since the last time I checked, because there's also that. I'm going to tell you a story then about me and mindset. I've already told you one about the flute. I've already told you a second one about the toothpaste, and I can have a third one. And this is when I was running my first business, and I could burn the candle at both ends. I had tons of energy. I believed in what I was doing. I was developing the business. I was building the voice. I was solving people's problems, and I was out with them, you know, head down, hands dirty, in the middle of helping them make the most of this service that we were offering. And I, you know, for a while it was just me, and then it was more, and then it was more, and then it was 10 of us. And then when we were acquired, I started working with and had other reports outside of my 10. And I got in my own way a lot of times. I expected everybody else to have the same energy level that I did. I expected that just by me inviting them, they would want to come join me, and they would want to live the way that I was living while we were at work. I wasn't asking them to live at work all the time. I wasn't asking them to work more than what they had agreed to work or any of that stuff. But I was asking them to be all in and curious and energetic and passionate, like oozing it out of every single pore of their body. And, you know, that didn't work so well for me. And all I did was, at the time, I felt like I was butting my head up against a wall, and I kept running over and over and over again. And so I had extended the invitation, and I had said, hey, here I am. I've got this invitation for you. Come play with me. Come do this job with me. Let's do this great thing together, because I know you're excited as I am if you come join me. And people would come part of the way, and nobody ever came all the way. But the people who didn't want to come at all ended up leaving. And I had a high turnover rate of employees, and I didn't understand why. And I didn't even think anything of it. At the time, I didn't think anything of it, high employee turnover being an issue. Well, it took somebody with a little more experience than me to point out and say, you know, Jess, you have really high turnover, and that's a problem. And why is it a problem? It impacts the business negatively. I had to retrain the same person to do the same thing over and over again. And then I'd invite them to play, and they'd get overwhelmed or not want it or think it was different than what they signed up for, and they'd leave. So I just kind of brushed it off, and I really should not have. And, you know, hindsight being 20/20, I can look back and go, oh, sure, I had the invitation, but I didn't recognize that they may not want to play that way. So how could I show up and help them? Because I thought they were right for the job. I thought they had the right attitude. I knew they had the right basic skills, and I knew that they could do the things that we wanted to do because of their excitement in our conversations leading up to their hire. But I expected them to do it on my terms. Big assumption on my part, and big assumption that it just didn't matter if they didn't want to come up to my level and play at the speed and at the rate and at the depth that I was. And so I, you know, like I said, hindsight's 20/20. I'm looking back going, wow, I had a lot to learn from that. I can't believe I missed it. Yet at the time I wasn't ready. And so that's the other thing about mindset to consider, is maybe we're not ready for any change. So when we're looking back and we're evaluating, or somebody's telling us this great story about ourselves, and we're like, really? That's how you perceived, that's how you perceived me? Which, by the way, is how I found out about this story. Somebody told it to me, and I was like, oh, now that you point it out, it's so true. It's so true. So, you know, 3 things that I wish I knew back then when I was managing all of these people, they're these. I even wrote them down so I would get them right. How do I check myself for closed thinking? Because my inability to question my assumption as to why nobody was accepting my invitation was actually limiting and pretty closed, because it created bottlenecks. Work didn't get done. The second one is the exact steps for solving a problem so I could have helped my team learn the process that I was at. So maybe they weren't ready to go all in. Maybe they weren't ready to go as far or as long or as put in as much energy. But maybe they also didn't have the skills, and I didn't have the awareness or the ability at the time to be the leader, to be a leader that I could have been, and encouraged them and developed them in those ways to at least allow them to open up in their own way and on their own path, so we could have this great shared, this commonality that we were working from, this shared space. And I also would tell myself that the payoff is not instantaneous. When they came on board, I got them trained as quickly as I thought they could to my standards, right? Here's how fast it took me, or here's how long it took me. So it's only going to take you that long as well. And recognize that sometimes slower is better. Recognize that sometimes through training another person, through having that interaction of talking about it, actually brings up opportunities, actually brings up places to evaluate. The instantaneous piece doesn't happen with personal or team development. And for that matter, business development. I mean, the growth that we see happening right now in our business, or the decline in sales that we see happening right now in our business, is not from what we did today or yesterday. It's from what we did 3 months ago, or didn't do 3 months ago. It's from what we did 6 months ago, or what we did not do 6 months ago. So that's something for us to keep in mind too, the different paces that we're working at. And in the end, everything that we have gives us a new floor. Gives us a new floor to work from. Every failure and every success, we fall, but we're not falling as far unless we really want to, and we dig finding out if we can still bounce from that high or not. Every experience we have gives us a floor, and we can launch from that floor. And when we fall back to the floor we have, and then it actually goes up a couple of notches because we have more experience under our belt. We have more awareness. We can make different choices from the information that we have, and we can launch again. All of the books that I mentioned, all of the information and the websites will be in program notes for Program 11, The Matter of Mindset. Come to thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and look for Program 11 or search the name, The Matter of Mindset. I know you have experiences with mindset. I know it's probably, and I want to hear yours. As a leader, what's something that you were surprised about? When did your assumptions get questioned and it was uncomfortable or embarrassing? When did you notice somebody else's and just recognized that you were able to shift to meet them where they were, to get the job done, to achieve the outcome, to have a good meeting, to just deepen a relationship even? We want to know, and remember, it's a matter of mindset.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Duell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.